just going to say a few quick words about growing winter vegetables in containers.
Okay.
So the thing is, lots of winter vegetables grow very, very well in containers, particularly the Asian greens and salads. They don't really need to have their roots don't need to go down very deep.
Okay.
And in the winter, it's cool. Things stay moist for a long time, and watering wasn't much of a problem.
Yeah.
So you can very successfully grow lots of different winter crops in about 2 inches of compost.
Okay.
Which means that if you've got yourself like this is a little plastic mushroom tray from the market,
Yeah.
you could easily grow maybe about a pound of lettuce leaves or winter leaves in this over the winter if you had it in a sheltered spot, maybe in a greenhouse or...
What's that? 6 to 8 little plants would go in there.
About 6 plugs from here would fill one of these.
Yep.
As you notice, it's got lots of holes. Sheet of newspaper on the bottom, maybe
Okay.
some plastic around the side or some newspaper around the side to stop the compost falling out.
Yep.
Fill it with compost, plant your plugs,
Okay.
and you're done. So with the plugs, if you're going to do this outside, ideally get your plugs September. If you're doing it indoors, early October would still work. If you're going to use composts, what kind of compost you can use to grow with salad? Anything freshly out of a bag is fine.
Okay.
Compost from your compost heap would be great. Old compost from some plants from over the summer would work too. Let's say you could recycle, if you've had tomatoes in grow bags, you could recycle those to grow your winter salads. If you think there's enough fertility there, so crops are still dark green and growing well, you could probably plant your salads straight into that. If you think that it might need a bit more, you could add a bit more slow release fertilizer or maybe a few chicken manure pellets. Don't add too much because that will cause problems.
Okay.
And you can always add more later.
What have you got there in that pot?
Well, the next thing is, another thing you can do is, as your beans and tomatoes are finishing off, you can start planting your follow-on crops straight into that.
Yeah.
So
That's
that
a
means
good
they get
idea.
established earlier. And the important thing about getting your crops established is the bigger they are going into the winter, the more your crops are going to be going into the winter.
Okay.
Because there won't be so much growth after November.
Okay.
The more growth you've got going into winter, the bigger your leaf bank's going to be.
Okay. Brilliant.
The other thing also is just something about, I mentioned using these small containers. Well, what's wrong with using a big container like this? Well, nothing, except using 3 times as much compost. So
Yes, but you'd get more than 6 plants in that.
yeah, I
wouldn't
know,
you?
but
Yeah.
on this size, it's
Yeah.
3 times the depth.
Oh, so you don't need the depth.
You don't need the depth. That's the important
Okay.
thing. So if you've got something big like this, you could just basically get another box, halve the compost between 2, get twice the crops if
Okay.
you've got the room to do that. Or use these things. These are really cute.
Okay.
One last thing, what plants to choose and what plants probably not worth doing. Essentially, it's cut and come again. Leafy greens work really well in containers like this.
Okay. So we're talking lettuces, spinach,
lettuce,
kale.
endive, spinach, mustard greens, herbs like things like
Okay.
parsley. Great in this.
Okay.
We're also going to be doing things like broad beans, peas, spring cabbage, and onions, like
Okay.
big onions. They're often not beans so much, but they're often single harvest crops. They take up a lot of room. They need more soil depth. They're really crops growing in the open ground for harvesting later in the spring.
Okay.
So they're the ones to avoid in a container like this.
Okay.